Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fly on the Wall with Josh Hill. I'm Josh Hill. I'm joined today by Jagdeep Singh. Jagdeep has a fantastic and really interesting background, which I'm really looking forward to getting into. From starting a career in civil engineering to making his way through to leading some of Australia's blue chip organisations in technology and transformation, non-exec director work. We've got a bit of everything. I really look forward to jumping into it. Jagdeep, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Pleasure's all mine. Tell me, what did I miss in that intro?
Oh, what did you miss? I think thanks for summarizing the career, perhaps first. On hindsight, it's a perfect vision. I wouldn't say we missed, but there's perspectives of life in terms of there are many missteps and there's thousands of failures and moments of self-doubt, moments of despair. I guess that's the aspect of life on which you build your foundations, and then you're able to summarize your career with glass half full as a successful career.
It's funny how you can turn 25 years into one sentence, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously do it a lot, but it's very hard to go through it. And I like your point. There's a lot there that you look back on and go, it looks great on paper, but probably was quite difficult, which I'm sure we'll jump into today. Tell me a little bit more about starting your career. I mean, your civil engineering degree, started in India, moved to Australia. What was the kind of logic? How did young Jagdeep decide this is what he was going to do with his life?
Yeah, I wish there was a logic. It was a flow. So as you said, grew up in India, did the civil engineering, and again, I hope I can say that was always the plan. That wasn't the plan. Growing up in that type of environment, the way to economic freedom is through education, and that in aspiring middle class families normally means become a doctor or become an engineer, right? So that was the path I took. And then you come out of graduation and that reality hits you because there's 300,000 other engineers that have graduated that year, and all are fighting for a role or a position in an environment. And this is 1998 when it was still quite unstructured. So what do you do, right? Life hits you at that point. And I thought I should try to switch into computer science. That was always an interest. The education system in India at that point was quite rigid. It is a bit more flexible now, but still, if you've done bachelor's in civil, you can potentially do masters in structural engineering, or there is no moving out. So options are go overseas. Australia is a choice. US is a choice. Australia was essentially cheaper, quicker, and RMIT University at that point gave me conditional admission into, okay, we'll have you as a master's student. Let's see how you go. So that perhaps was the first pivot in my career, to take that risk and see if I can now try a different path in life. And that's what landed me in Australia in the year 2000.
Sliding doors moment.
Yes.
And as you say, the first of a few. Right. So without RMIT giving you that conditional approval, who knows where you could have been and what you could have done.
Absolutely. It's my life, as I've probably mentioned a few times, has been just going with the flow, what comes, whatever opportunity or whatever door got opened, I took it. Quite different from a perspective that I defined a particular play and then applied the roles in it. It was more like someone invited me to the stage and said, can you play this particular role? And I said, yep, I'll do it, and let's see where it takes me.
Yeah. Well, it's worked out all right.
Yeah.
Why computer science? What made you decide from engineering and civil engineering? We see people that do make that transition, but it's not common.
Yeah. I think part of it is, again, the economic reality. Part of it is the interest. If I can say that, even during my civil engineering, there were aspects in terms of early aspects. This is year 96, 97, 98, quite early time period, still in the technological evolution. But things were interesting. So we did couple of projects there during my civil engineering that also kind of opened my eyes to the world. The World Wide Web was expanding. Certainly, information was starting to be more available and accessible. Um, and of course, that again, you can't ignore the situation in India at that point, with India being opening up and Indian graduates being in high demand and working for organizations. And you look at that and see as one means of having a good career in life. Because at that point, when you were 20, you are essentially looking for, how do I have a career that is a lot more stable, that gives me that economic certainty, and I can have a great life. That's all you kind of thinking at that point. You're not essentially thinking I'm going to be a CIO or a CTO or anything else. And obviously the opportunity, right? If RMIT would have said we will only give you in electronics and telecommunication, I would have taken it. Yeah, at that particular point. Of
course.
But that's what happened. Yeah.
And you graduate then post .com boom, post Y2K, everything kind of an interesting time. I would have taken it at that period of time.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the landscape when you walk out of your degree now, going, all right, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that was extremely tough at that point. It wasn't just the IT bust, as you kind of mentioned. There were other things happening in the global world, right? 9/11 obviously happened, right? And when you are an international student on the streets of Melbourne, your monthly income is not more than $200 a month, right? And I remember I'd earned $200 a month, and $75 was the monthly train ticket. You needed that to be mobile, so that's gone. So you're left with $125 to manage your month, right? And then you're not a permanent resident. You are trying to adapt and adjust to a new way of operating in a new country. I always thought I spoke well. I was educated, but I had no experience, and the Australian market is experience. Where's the Australian experience, right? Because that's not, I wouldn't say that's an issue, but that's an Australian way of filtering out the relevance of someone, right? And those were the hard periods to navigate. So that, I would say, is the second pivot in my life. So you have a master's degree, but zero experience. So then, how do you get into the workforce? So I started hiding my experience. I would say I just have a diploma in IT, right, to get any job, right? Yeah. And that's how I landed into the Wesfarmers world at that point, the Officeworks world, and got into Officeworks technology sales. And then grew through the ranks there and became, at some point, I opened Officeworks stores. So I was a retail store manager, right? And I still think that was the best experience I had, because as a store manager, you recruit, you are in customer service. I had a forklift driver's license, right? You do receiving, you do stock take, you do loss and risk, you do merchandising, you do marketing, you do everything, you do payroll, right? So you learn in that role what I think you cannot learn in any other role to this day, that complete running of a business. And then eventually I started to get into a lot more, pseudo technology roles. I'll say I was always coming, because of my knowledge and because of how I could communicate between business and technology, I started finding roles that were a conduit between business and technology. So then I did loss and risk, I did finance, I did merchandising, I did new product development, I did marketing. And I think that then, even though in those times it felt as if, what am I doing? But now that I reflect back, that is the experience that has shaped me to get where I am, or what I have been able to achieve. And also to maybe get a perspective on life, that straight path perhaps is not always the best path, right? So that sideways move, as we talk about in the recruitment space a lot, and going with the flow. And if you have the resilience and the patience in terms of long term, it's panned out. So then that's how I eventually, but slowly, came back into the technology world.
Do you think that that skill set, I mean, that again, as we said at the very beginning, right? Hindsight's 2020. You sit back and look at it now and go, well, I did all this and it kind of got me to the end result. Great. In the moment, you must have been sitting there going, or maybe you weren't, I don't know, but sitting there going, this is not really what I set out to do here, but I'm enjoying it, so I'm going to keep doing it anyway. Most people, maybe with an ego, would want to just be doing what they were educated in. Was that something that you noticed in yourself? Are you just happy to do anything?
I think it'd be wrong for me to say that I didn't go through those feelings. Absolutely, every day you'll go through those feelings. I think that just like that Maslow hierarchy of needs. When food on the table is an issue, you take everything, right? So that's the first step you start with. Even after I had my first role, the second role, the fifth role within West Farmers, because I was there for 13 years, I still would have applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs, right? And that is because you're still trying to get into maybe a role or an organization where you think the skills that you were educated in might get used a little bit more. So you try, and I think you learn from that. I never felt that I had a situation where I could just say I am gonna just quit and try to find the role that I needed to go to, because even that clarity perhaps did not existed, right? So you're moving through the ranks, you're potentially earning a bit of money, but then you're looking at your um, fellow peers from university who probably followed a traditional path, and they started as software engineers and they're probably now a project manager. But then you kind of, I'm here, I don't actually have those skills. How do you jump? And those kind of fogs are not clear, and you're trying to figure your way out through those fogs. So I'd say, sorry, to answer your question, I'd say those thoughts kept me trying and kept me to try different things, and polish your resume differently, talk differently, meet different people, try different organizations. Maybe that prepared me until I was good enough to be hired for the next role. But at the same time, the flip side is West Farmers. I was there in West Farmers for 13 years, right? I continue to grow through the ranks. And maybe while I was trying hard, I was also trying hard inside to grow and succeed, and followed that parallel path, I think, Josh, if I could say that. And eventually, I think the learnings from both sides, internally within West Farmers as I grew through the ranks, and externally as I'm trying to see what is next. I think both those learnings combine together and shape you for your next role. Yeah.
Ultimately, your next role was still kind of in that pathway, right? You moved up and finished it after 13 years, as you mentioned, with a pretty important and sizable role.
Yeah.
When did it feel like you were kind of on the right track, for whatever better term, whatever that definition was at the time? Really, I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. This is where I am, and this is what I want to be doing in life.
Yeah, I think maybe to answer your question, that sense of satisfaction has probably only arrived in the last 5 to 7 years. And I think the satisfaction's arrived when you start looking at your career a bit more than just a ladder to grow. When in the last 5 to 7 years, as I've looked through my career and said, surely there's a way I can have one-to-many relationships, as in instead of working for one organization, I can contribute to many, and many organizations can benefit from me. That doesn't mean in a monetary sense. That doesn't mean that you get paid for everything. And that's where the not-for-profit angle come in. And then once you get to that point in career, I think that sense of satisfaction comes a lot more in a portfolio sense, to say that there is no more. Perhaps hunger is the wrong word, but there is no unvalidated hunger to just keep rising up and up. the hunger is a lot more horizontal than it is vertical. Yeah,
because you've kind of proved yourself at that point. You've done everything within reason that you kind of want to do, and now it's, well, how do you give back? Is that the motivator?
There is. I look at this in the sense of in technology we talk about you kind of develop an app and then it becomes a product, and then product at some point becomes a platform, and the most mature is a marketplace, right? I just look at sometimes our careers like that to say there's a personal angle and there's a professional angle, and then there's the purpose angle, right? Personal angle, as I mentioned before, right? You grow up in one organization, or you shift and you get to another organization and you try to grow up again. But when you realize that you can have one too many, you can work in one job for purpose and get some money, but you can still contribute in many ways to others, whether it's startups or being a mentor or not-for-profit sector. Then there's a professional angle to say, yes, I'm a technologist. So not only do I contribute and learn from my organization, I can use my skills and experience in a variety of ways in the world, especially in the world that we live in, right? And then that purpose angle, to me, I know the dominant narrative is find your purpose, right? And I've perhaps always struggled to put that to say, these are the two lines that define what my purpose is. I kind of look at the purpose as a little bit of a bucket. We've filled our personal buckets and we're filling our professional buckets. That purpose bucket has to be filled by doing things that feel good or that return back. And as you kind of fill that purpose bucket, I think that purpose will be maybe defined, maybe shaped. I don't think it's ever going to be a complete definition for me, but it's around what feels right and how you contribute. There is the tradition or the cultural background I come from. There's a concept, there's a word called Seva, SEWA. And that essentially, in a loose definitional sense, means giving back, but giving back in the sense of your personal and mental capacity, in terms of your mindset, and in terms of financial resources or other resources, right? So it's that angle that is filling the kind of the purpose bucket for me, if I can say that. Can I define what that is? I'll struggle with that. Yeah.
I don't think you need to define it if you're doing it, to be honest. If it makes you, feel that you're getting that satisfaction, and if you're, giving back, in which I know you do in many ways, and we'll definitely dive into that in a little bit more detail. I think that's all that matters, right? And you're right. People conflate purpose and role or work purpose being the two things. And I think sometimes it's important to have something outside of that to give balance. I know that's not a very popular sentence in this day and age, but balance is a wonderful thing. I think Absolutely. It's where the best people are. You've managed then to make the move. You make the move from Melbourne to the sunny shores of the Illawarra. Yes. You move to Wollongong. Yeah. Take up a fantastic role there. What was the kind of catalyst for that role coming around? And obviously you've moved from country, so not as big a move, but still probably quite seismic as well.
Yeah, I would say that's a third pivot, right? So 13 years at Wesfarmers, again, fantastic organization. You grow through the ranks, and then you come to a point, say, what's next, right? As we were talking about. And I think maybe I didn't write it down, but there is always in the back of mind, I'm seeking that uncomfortable, right? These days we talk about comfortable and uncomfortable. Maybe that's what I was doing by default. And part of it was, I think maybe a better answer to your original question was, I wanted to get into the engineering side of things. So BlueScope came my way. Can't get more engineering than making steel in Australia. And a good role to go to. And my CIO at that point, Larry Howard, has been a career-long mentor for me. And he said, Jag, you'll have to come to either Sydney or Wollongong. And I thought, if I need to, shift from Melbourne, then I might as well enjoy Wollongong, right? So that was the risk. So I quit my role to come to the BlueScope role. My wife quit her job. We sold the home that we had in Melbourne. So that was, and again, a risk that many will not take in hindsight. We certainly had a lot of feedback from our friends group to say we're crazy. People come to Melbourne and we're leaving Melbourne to go to kind of Wollongong, right? But that's a risk I took, and that paid off, n number of times for me. And again, 11 years in BlueScope, fantastic journey of growth, fantastic variety of roles, roles that I didn't even think existed came my way. And again, I took anything that was given to me or asked of me. So any tap on the shoulder to say, do you want to do that? I did it, perhaps best defined by the large scale business transformation role I took, going back into a program that wasn't on track, to leave your normal job in IT to go to business and to say, I'm going to fix this program in that hyper visibility, tens of millions of dollars, highly risky, again, people would say. Even internally in the organization, there can be sometimes a narrative, don't go on special projects because nobody comes back. But I did that. And then again, that extremely hard, one of the hardest thing I did in my life, but it landed. And then again, that gave me the credibility, but more importantly, again, that gave me the next level of confidence myself to say, I understand what it takes to deliver some transformation like that. And that's been the career story coming to BlueScope and to Elavara. Yeah.
And I think that skill set that you've just defined, the ability to go in and turn around high level enterprise transformations that aren't working, which unfortunately is a lot of them. It sounds easy now, again, with that 2020 hindsight. Not easy at all. Very hard. A lot of people fail doing it. You've made the move. Arguably, Sydney to Illawarra is a harder move. You had family, you got everything else. Rather than moving country is probably an easy decision, as you said. You've gone through a lot over that period of time. Where does that come from for you? That ability to go, I'm just going to do that thing. I'm going to give that a go, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I don't know where and how, and maybe that is part of my upbringing, and maybe there's a cultural angle. There's always been this understanding that of that risk and reward situation. You have to take risk to get that reward. There has always been that understanding that in the long term it will play out. And right now I'm in a position where last year I actually left the BlueScope roles, again from an understanding to say in a long term it will play out, but now is the time. So I'd say that is one. I think the other angle I would say, and I didn't had the words or the frames for it, but it has materialized in my life, is the freedom is not about removing constraints. It's around controlling and managing your constraints. So with my partner and with my family, I feel like we manage those constraints well to allow some decision-making or risk-taking capacity. So when I, again, decided last year that, it was time to explore after 11 years something different last year, I felt that because I had the constraints under control in terms of financial health, in terms of health, in terms of family relationships, and that allows you to take those risks. And perhaps there is an angle of we are but product of our experiences, right? So those pivots and those risks in the past of my life have played out over the long term. So that has built, I would say, some character or resilience or persistence to be able to then take that risk again, Josh. Yeah.
What about, again, hindsight 2020, where it's a theme that we're going out throughout this discussion.
Yeah.
What about times where it didn't work out? Is there many times where you sat there and went, nah, this has absolutely failed and I've bitten off more than I can chew and they want me to do this, I can't do it, or those sorts of situations?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I have given up in a work context if a situation was given to me, but in a personal context, that self-doubt is always there. The feedback I always get from people is, you come across as a very calm person, right? And I kind of sometimes wonder, only if you knew, right, what is happening inside. So I think the failures have been many, and the failures have been, for example, at the very start of my career, why I did civil engineering in India was I wanted to do engineering, but you have to sit an exam, and the highest ranked people will get the computer science, and that's how the hierarchy felt. And the civil engineering was the bottom of the ladder. Unlike Australia, here it is top of the ladder. Over there, it was bottom of the ladder because I fluked my exam. I did not do very well at that point, right? So that was perhaps one failure. Now coming back to the work kind of context, I would say it played out very beautifully in BlueScope. If people are aware of BlueScope's history, around 2014, 2015 time period, BlueScope was deciding whether to keep steel making in Australia or not. And this is 1 year after I've kind of joined BlueScope. And so you're kind of thinking, what have you done, right? But from that opportunity or risk came another opportunity to be the first innovation manager in technology in BlueScope. And that was all about failure. And my CIO, again, Larry, at that point said, here is a bucket of money, go and see what the future business systems for BlueScope look like, or future data for BlueScope look like, or future integration platform for BlueScope look like.
Right.
And that was all failures. Then I was trying and failing and getting comfortable with failure. And one of those experiments turned into a success, and then the second one turned into a success, and the third one. So I'd say that perhaps is a positive spin on the failures and setbacks. But those the setbacks and failures continue now, right?
Every day.
Every day. People, some might look at me and say, you got a board role, you work with startups, you do mentorship, and you've got a good career. Yes, and glass half full, great. But even today, I would be trying various things and failing on those various things, hoping for one thing to land at some point.
Well, you've got to keep trying, don't you, right? It's not how many times you get knocked out, it's how many times you get up, as the old saying goes. Let's talk a little bit more about that other bucket. Let's go into the other bucket of the non-professional, or, aligned, but not kind of the day-to-day role. Let's start with the mentoring. Let's talk a bit about the startup stuff. We'll get to the non-exec director and not-for-profit stuff as we get on. What was the kind of passion there? Because you've been in big businesses for the vast majority of your career. Was it always a bit of an itch for you to go, oh, I like the innovation, I like that kind of stuff, I want to go and talk to these people? Or where did that come from for you?
In people's side, is that it's been a journey on the people's side too. And when people now ask me what your leadership style is, or what do you stand for in terms of technology or transformation, and my answer always is growing with my people. So not just growing myself, but with my people, and my people means the bosses I have. If they're growing and I'm growing with them, to me, that is a success. If I'm growing and my people are growing with me, then that is a success. That always then in my life, and it played out big time in the transformation that I kind of was mentioning. The test for me always has been the discretionary effort. When you see you doing the discretionary effort, and when you see your teams are doing discretionary effort, not because they work for a fantastic company with a purpose or vision or X, Y, Z, it's because they're working for you and they don't want to let you down. And in my case, in BlueScope, that kind of played out when we were doing, 24/7, 7-day cutover. People are waking up at 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. to do their things. And that's kind of how my career has played out. People talk about that I have unlimited budgets for coffee, and somehow that ability to build those long-term relationships and convert them into perhaps loyalty is not the wrong word, but a kind of a mutual trust and mutual friendship, which is bigger than career, has always been something that has clicked for me, and I've used that as my strength, not in a manipulative way, but in a very genuine and authentic way. And then from that came a lot of pathways into mentorship, to say, I'm doing this in the work environment with my work colleagues. Maybe there's much more broader. And then I've started doing the mentorship work with Leadership Illawarra, with Melbourne Business School, and few other. And so that's how that thing has panned out. That also then means sometimes people reach out on LinkedIn to say, hey, I'm a mid-career professional. You seems to have somehow navigated this. I'm in the same situation. How can I do it? And so sometimes it does turn into a coaching kind of angle.
Fair play to you, because a lot of people, when they reach the top, don't necessarily want to let the ladder down or help other people as much, and they're very much still focused on their own career. But it's abundantly clear that's never been your bag.
Correct.
Why startups? What would you like about that?
I think it was, again, coming back to say, one, the desire to be useful, maybe not the right word, in a one-to-many kind of context. Technology, as we all know, is disrupting in many, many ways. And then as I worked with my mentors and mentees, and also with the not-for-profit sector, you see how technology can play a very extremely large role in eliminating some of those barriers, whether we talk about equitable access to things, whether we talk about communication, we talk about translating, we talk about language barriers, we talk about the same access that Sydney has in Wollongong and the regional areas. So, and I felt that the solutions are going to come not because you and I or the normal technology companies are going to follow a sequential path and at some point they'll reach it. It's because some of these newer inventions and startups will leapfrog and give that access or equity today, not tomorrow. So that got me interested into startups, and where I find. So I got interested, but again, I didn't know what role I should play. And I increasingly find the role I'm playing is when startups want to scale, when they want to get their product enterprise ready and they don't know how enterprise play, when they want to fit their small piece of software or SaaS product into 800 other applications that an organization has. How does that work? Startups don't necessarily know how to talk to the technology industries or the Microsofts or the Salesforce of the world. So that's where they find some of the skills or experiences I have, and I find that to be an extremely useful space. One thing I'd mention here is I got connected with a good powerful example is I got connected with Bionic Institute in Melbourne, where I'm in the board advisory committee. Bionic is perhaps not very well known, but that was the parent research body behind Cochlear. Cochlear came out of Bionic Institute, right? Yeah. And they have a very small team of fantastic world-class scientists. They have miniature manufacturing experts, so they deal in medical devices or med tech space. And you can see how health sciences, research, miniature manufacturing, electrical simulations and signaling, and then AI and technology all kind of morphing to produce outcomes that make a difference in someone's life. So I think those kind of things, when I started interacting with them, I had like, how can I help? Right? I'm in steel and retail versus medical technology. And then you go in and you discover in the discussion small windows of opportunities where you see your skills are useful, and you're trying to bring various people together to move a conversation from point A to point B. And so that's been the angles where I've been involved with startups, I would say. Yeah.
Perspective is such a great thing though, right? Yeah. And to your point a second ago is that the disruptors are the futures of the startups of today, right? So how do we get them enterprise ready and all these sorts of things. I think it's something that's not talked about enough, because I meet, as you can imagine, many startup founders who are brilliant, but being brilliant doesn't necessarily get you a seat at the table at those discussions. So someone like yourself, if they're self-aware enough, I can see absolutely where that value
correct.
lies.
And be the devil's advocate in a good way. So sometimes I say to the founders I work with, my role is, I am in a helicopter at 100 foot or 1,000 foot. I am telling you where you're going to fall, or what fires are coming ahead, or how to avoid some of those fires, and where, if you don't pivot, you're going to burn. And some founders take it. Others will say, no, I'm going to fight the world and I'm going to make this a success. Now, there's no right and wrong. There's been examples where founders have ignored every other advice and they've eventually become very successful. But my role is to work on the 99% that will fail, not necessarily on the 1% that's going to succeed. And if I can, in that 99% of the bell curve, if I can help guide and support a few, then I would say that's kind of my contribution. And I think I forgot to mention that learning for me has been immense, because you have to shift your way of thinking of large enterprises and question my kind of way of thinking about how projects should run, for example, or how transformation should go, what a good product looks like, what a good cyber controls look like. Enterprise ready at a BlueScope ASX 50 level are not the same that you will apply at a startup or a not-for-profit level. So that's been my learnings out of these activities. Yeah,
it's always good two-way street, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't really think about that, but of course it would make sense. You must look at that and go, how many people are you putting into this? Where's the rest of them? Very, very different kind of perspectives. Let's talk about the not-for-profit work and the non-exec director work, because it's something I'm really eager to talk about. What was the catalyst for you kind of falling into that area? I know advisory, it's got a little bit less rigor to it at times. Non-exec director work's got a lot of fiduciary responsibilities and governance oversights and the like. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, as you grow up in your careers, even the titles are, CIOs and CTOs, I would say the technical work is only 20% of your role. 80% is still, governance and, financials and, the HR, the marketing side, or the procurement angles of that. So whether we like it or not, we are becoming a complete business managers. But you have an edge in the sense of you can articulate technology. And again, that one-to-many space, how do you get to the natural evolution of your career and your life? And you say, I want to be able to guide now instead of being an order taker. You want to be in a position where you're shaping the strategy and helping an organization go from an A to B. So that was the desire. And then you marry that up with the purpose angle. And you take those and look for an appropriate position or the role where you can contribute. And on the flip side, you learn. You kind of become a better person to govern. You learn from your fellow directors. You learn the shift of being an executive versus a member of board of directors, and you learn the art of asking better questions. So that was the shifts.
Two-way street again. It's made you the better executive.
Correct.
For your experience in governance. Was it, and I know that you're largely focused on your local community, which I think is fantastic as well in the not-for-profit space. Was it something that was tough to break into? Did people not necessarily understand the value that someone with your background could bring? Or did you walk in and they went, yes, absolutely, we've been waiting for you, here we go?
Yeah, I would say it is tough. Yeah. And there is no playbook. There is quite a confusing narrative also, I would say, on how to get some of those positions. I'd say a few things again. It is, in my case, it was a 2 to 3 year pipeline before I had my first board role. And that meant networking, that meant, fine tuning my value proposition. That meant, obviously, once you have an opportunity to go through the interview pathway, it is as competitive as it is in the normal job market. I think a lot of people or a lot of my peers would sometimes want that role, but we are unwilling to contribute the time that it takes to learn and prepare yourself, whether it is education or it is reaching out to people or connecting with people. And then I think also leaving the outcome to luck, perhaps, right? And if you can prepare and you're doing everything right and you're connecting with the right people, and you are building your profile up, then I think the outcome will take care of itself. I'll leave that amount of outcome for luck. But if you leave everything else for luck to say somehow it will arrive, then I think for some it may, but then I think it's a harder. So yes, I think it takes a long time. It takes a lot of hard work and careful planning. And you've got to put almost as much the same amount of effort as you would put to find a new role and then to maintain it. Right? I also see the other side where some have achieved their directorship roles, but the contribution is not there. So it's gonna hurt at some point. Yeah.
On that note, I mean, do you believe? Let me start off. I'll state my bias in that I do believe that there's going to be an increase in technologists in the boardroom and in the C-suite, if I'm honest, and probably the CEOs of the future or the current CIO crop. Where do you think the opportunity lies for people in our background to really capitalize on that? Because you touched on it briefly there, that maybe if we don't go after it or if we don't make those plans to go and kind of take that next step, it won't come to us. I genuinely believe that. What do you think is going to happen in that sense? What's your kind of crystal ball prediction?
Yeah, look, I think it's again two circles of the Venn diagram for me, right? So as a technologist first, that 80-20 rule comes in again. Yes, we're going in as a technologist to help the board manage the cyber, the AI, the technology angles a bit better. But the board does not delegate it to you. You manage collectively as a board. So the rest of the board has to understand. And for the rest of the board to understand and the organization to understand, I need to be speaking the language of business. I need to be able to talk in financial numbers. I need to be able to talk in the people side of things, in culture side of things, in procurement side of things, or in the risk side of things. So to have that first role, while technology is the vertical with T-shaped angle that we are going in, we need to be comfortable talking the language of the business. And the flip side is also true at the board level. Where it is missing is you do have a lot of legal experts and a lot of finance experts and a lot of risk assurance, capable leaders, but the technology experience is not there. And some of it can be filled by people like us, but not all of it can be filled. So those roles also need to gain the second circle of the Venn diagram is they also need to gain that technology narrative, that experience, and that language for the boards of the future to be successful. Yeah.
I agree. Is it up to us to help bring them into that middle of that Venn diagram?
I think we have a role to play. Yeah. Absolutely. We have a role to play. And that's what, as we go into the role, if we think I'm on this board just because I've been a CIO or a CTO and I'm only going to talk when there's a technical angle, then we are missing the big picture.
Completely agree. Graduates, interesting time at the moment with everything going on. I know you like to give back to the community in that sense as well and mentor and everything of that ilk. Where do you think the graduate pathway for the future lies? I've gone right from the very top right to the very bottom here. Sorry. Where do you think that future lies? Because there's even a report out this morning in the AFR that law firms are getting rid of them at an alarming rate. what advice would you give to graduates in the market at the moment?
It's certainly quite fluid situation. My mind goes to a couple of things, and I'll explain them. One is like triangularity, and the second one is the pivot. Right? And what I mean by increasingly these days, we talk about T-shaped careers or capabilities. So you're expert in one field and you have a lot of knowledge of a broader areas. I think that kind of vertical needs to be a lot more broader. So it needs to be at least 3. And what I mean by that is, if I give you an example using the bionic one again, you have to be a doctor. You need to know about how robotics and miniature manufacturing actually works. And you need to be comfortable with technology and data and analytics and medical devices and sensors and stuff. So that's 3 fields kind of. So that's a triangulation. And if you develop your niche by using any 3 verticals of today, then you are getting towards a niche. And I think that is important for the careers of tomorrow. If I'm just a technical person, I've been a software engineer or a network architect, and I'm just in that vertical and now become a project manager or program manager or a head of applications, and then I want to be a CIO or a CTO, it's very narrow. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's going to be increasingly hard if we do not develop other sectors. So hence why you sometimes find a lot of CFOs who are CIOs, right? Because there is that triangulation happening, and they picked up the technology and they are bringing up their risk and financial management things to, and we as CIOs and CTOs have to do that at some point. So that triangulation needs to happen, I would say. That would be my one advice for graduates. My second one would be around pivot. And what I mean by that is, I think increasingly us following one career path for the whole life is not going to be true. Even 2 is not going to be true. So my thing is, you probably will have to pivot 4 or 5 times in the career. And that will require that mental capability of resilience, of failing, of falling and then getting back up, skilling yourself again. In a financial sense, you will have periods of high income and periods of low income. So I would say that is the space that the graduates will need to get comfortable with and almost imagine that happening. Now, the society is not structured like that. The banks don't give you a mortgage if you have a fluctuating career. So the society will have to evolve, I think, to such a lifestyle. But that's, you should never predict anything, but that's where my mind goes to. And that's what I work with my mentees on. And that's what I keep telling my kids. Yeah.
Definitely better rounded individuals, right? You're 100% right. It used to be the case of the best software engineer would become the best CTO.
Correct.
Or at least the fastest to the CTO pathway. Totally different podcast around the lack of skills to transition there. But now I think that person's actually going to have to be better rounded as a graduate and understand, people skills and communication and business and all these sorts of things well before they write a line of code.
So true.
Because AI's got to write most of it these days.
Correct.
But how they're translating that problem into the solution is more critical maybe than what language they use to solve it.
Correct.
So it'll be very interesting. Been a very broad, wide-ranging discussion. Thank you so much for being so candid. Was there anything else you'd like to share? Anything else you'd like to finish on?
I think we discussed that freedom concept. So that would be one. I think the other one that has been a little bit of a calibrator for me is insignificance of our time. And what I mean by that is I only recently read it somewhere, so I don't know whether the numbers are correct or not. But it's like, if you imagine the universe came into being on the 1st of Jan, and then we as humans landed at 11:59 on December the 31st. All right. So I find in our careers, the egos sometimes take over. And I've kind of always calibrated that the insignificance of my time and value and scale in that sense. And that keeps my ego on check. And then there's leaders that forces us to continue to just simplify the complex situations and err on the side of making a decision and do something versus just sitting on it. So that's the second thing I'll add.
You know, it's funny. I have a saying I quite like, which is actually very similar, right? Is that you're not special. Everyone's been through something before. You know, whatever you're going through, people have been through it. There's always people out there worse off. Whenever we have good days, I like to think about that. Whenever we have bad days, I like to think about that as well. It's all going to happen again. And there's people out there doing it worse. There's people out there doing it better.
Yes.
What a way to finish. Look, appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Josh.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.